Ever stop to think about how the trillions, and I mean trillions, of microscopic parts that make up you all work together? Well, today we're going to follow the body's blueprint. We're starting with just a single cell and building our way up to the incredible system of bones and muscles that lets you, well, move. Let's dive in. So here's our game plan. We'll start with the most fundamental unit there is, the cell. Then we'll see how these cells get really specific jobs. After that, we're going to scale up to see how they assemble into tissues and organs. From there, we'll zero in on our skeleton, the body's framework. And finally, we'll get into the amazing mechanics of how we actually move. All right, let's start at the very beginning with our basic building block. You see, before we can even begin to understand the whole human body, we have to get to know the tiny microscopic engine that powers it all, the cell. Okay, let's put a typical animal cell and a plant cell side by side. At a glance, they look pretty similar, right? They share a lot of the same internal parts. But if you look a little closer, you start to spot the key differences. The plant cell, for instance, has that rigid outer wall for support, and it's got these green things called chloroplasts. Think of them as tiny solar panels it uses for photosynthesis. Now, inside every single one of these cells is a whole world of tiny machinery. You've got the nucleus, which is basically the control center, holding all the genetic blueprints. Then there's the cytoplasm, which is like the factory floor where all the chemical work gets done. And you absolutely cannot forget the mitochondria. These are the power plants, constantly generating energy to keep the whole operation running. So, what's the big takeaway here? Well, notice that all three types, animal, plant, and bacterial cells, they all share the absolute basics, a membrane, cytoplasm, and ribosomes. But here's the crucial distinction. Only the more complex plant and animal cells have that true nucleus and those mitochondrial power plants. And that, right there, is a fundamental difference in the blueprint of life. Okay, so we've got a blueprint for a generic cell, but a complex body like ours isn't built from generic parts, right? And that brings us to cells with a purpose. Because to build an organism, cells have to specialize. Each one has to adapt to perform a very unique job. Take the nerve cell, for example. This is the wiring of our body's communication network. I mean, look at its incredible structure. It has this super long axon to transmit signals and all these branched ends to connect to other cells. It's a perfect example of form following function. It's built to be a messenger, plain and simple. Now, let's look at a muscle cell. This cell is built for one thing, and one thing only: movement. These are long fibers, and they're designed specifically to contract and relax. So, is it any surprise that they are absolutely jam-packed with mitochondria, those cellular power plants? Of course not. Creating motion takes a ton of energy. And then there's the red blood cell. This thing is a masterpiece of specialized design. Its only purpose is to carry oxygen. And to do that as efficiently as possible, it makes a huge sacrifice. It actually gets rid of its own nucleus, just to free up more space. And that unique dimpled shape? That's not an accident either. It increases the surface area so it can grab even more oxygen. So we have all these amazing specialized cells, but they don't just float around working in isolation, which leads us to our next level, assembling the body. It's time to scale up and see how all these individual workers get organized into a fully functioning system. The body is organized in this really clear hierarchy. It all starts with those specialized cells. Now, when groups of similar cells team up to do a job, they form tissues. When different tissues combine for a specific function, they create an organ, like your heart. And finally, when a group of organs work together, you get an organ system. You can really think of it like a pyramid. Each level builds right on top of the one beneath it, and it gets more complex and more capable as you go up. From one single cell to a complete organ system, it's just an astounding feat of biological engineering when you think about it. And our body has a whole bunch of these systems. The circulatory system, that's our highway network. The digestive system is the fuel processing plant. And the two we're about to explore next, the skeletal and muscular systems, well, they're the dynamic duo that provide our structure and motion. So let's zoom in on that human framework. We're moving up to the macroscopic level now to take a really close look at the internal scaffolding that gives our body its fundamental shape, the skeletal system. And here it is, the body's internal frame. I mean, it's instantly recognizable. You've got the skull, which is basically a helmet for your brain, the rib cage, which is a protective cage for your heart and lungs, and the pelvis, which acts as the foundational anchor for your entire core. But the skeleton's job goes way beyond just support. Of course, it gives us protection for our vital organs, and it acts as an anchor for our muscles to create movement. But here's the hidden role you might not know about. The marrow deep inside our bones is actually a factory, churning out red and white blood cells. Pretty cool, huh? All right, finally, let's see how this framework actually creates motion. The skeleton provides the structure, but it's totally static on its own. It can't go anywhere without its dynamic partner, the muscular system. Now, the key to understanding all of this is the idea of antagonistic muscles. See, a muscle only has one power. It can pull. It can never push. So to create movement in two directions, like say bending and straightening your arm, muscles have to work in opposing pairs. As one pulls, its partner has to relax. Your arm is the absolute perfect example of this. You've got your bicep on the front and your tricep on the back. They are a classic antagonistic pair. They literally work in direct opposition to each other, and that's what allows you to bend and straighten your elbow. So, how does this elegant little tug of war actually work? What is really happening inside your arm when you flex? It's really like a beautifully coordinated dance. To bend your arm, your biceps contract, pulling your lower arm up. But at the exact same time, the triceps have to relax and lengthen to even allow that to happen. And to straighten the arm, the roles just reverse. The triceps contract, pulling the arm down, while the biceps relax. Simple as that. And there you have it. In just a few minutes, we've literally traveled from the DNA tucked inside a single nucleus all the way up to the complex, coordinated pull of muscles on bone. It just goes to show you the human body is truly an incredible system of interconnected systems. Just take a second to think about it. Your body is made of roughly 30 trillion specialized cells, all working together in perfect harmony right now as you're watching this. It's a staggering thought. Understanding the blueprint is the first step. So the only question left is, what part of this incredible machine will you explore next?